BJJ community in general around here is amazing. Like,
Totally.
yeah. And I've been watching kind of a lot of what those guys were doing over there, but just seeing how you are with River and like the way that you coach and your style and everything else like that, it was kind of a no-brainer. So I appreciate you taking me on as like a very, very, very white belt.
Yeah,
and
man.
So, yeah.
No, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you bringing River over there too. He's a really good student.
Yeah, yeah. He's just too much. He's just into so many other things that like I want. Honestly, like selfishly as a dad, I'm like, go just do BJJ and nothing else. And but it'll like you said, kids they come and go and they're all over the place with it. And then at what age do they kind of like really start? I mean, is it now? Like, is it at 10? Like, what age do they really start getting into it?
Well, that's the thing is, and we just recently changed this by adding more classes. Is like we've always because I started in Claudio's kids class when I was 10 years old.
Yeah,
and ever since back then, it was only Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday. You know, so you kind of train the kids to think of it as like a 2-day-a-week sport.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's this way in other places, but I think with Santa Cruz with the skateboarding and surfing and so much other stuff, it's like you're constantly competing with these other sports, you know, and then like, you know,
all the action sports.
Yeah, for sure.
And then if they have like a sport that happens to be on Tuesday, Thursday, then they have to disappear for that season. And then, you know, sometimes they make it back. Sometimes they don't, you know, and the ones that are more likely to make it back are the ones whose like dad trains too. And then they're like more likely that they'll make it back, but sometimes they don't. We get, you know, the kids program gets decimated in the summer just because, you know, beach town and everything. And I think it's a little bit like that everywhere, but probably not as much as Santa Cruz because you got junior lifeguards and everything.
So much to do out here. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the baseball community, obviously, and that's kind of my background. And I see it so much where I say it all the time. We have some of the best talent from an athletic standpoint in the entire country here in Santa Cruz. And our biggest issue is there's so much damn things to do, right? Like there's mountain biking and surfing and obviously BJJ and baseball and football and guards, like you said, like, and not just kind of getting in the water for surfing, but other ways to get in the water as well. And so it's almost like it gets diluted out, right? And so some of the best athletes could be killer, you know, grapplers, and they just, And so,
that's the thing. When I get a kid in there and he's really, you know, talented, he tends to also be talented at the other things that he tried too. So then it's kind of like, but you know, I mean the way that one thing is we tend to lose like kids a lot when they get into that teen range. Like I've got kids that'll train with me, start at like 4. Like, do you know Cláudio Aquino? He's a East Side surfer Brazilian. He's like one of the first.
I probably recognize him.
Crop of Brazilians that moved here. He's probably like 50 something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I probably know him.
He surfs at the hook a lot and stuff, but his son started with me at like 4 years old and he's 13 now. And that happens a lot because, you know, the parents are really like on him at that age. But once they get into like the high school age, like 15, 16, then we lose a lot of kids at that age, you know, and I think it just has to do with like, you know, surfing you can do at the time that you want. You know, the girls are into the surfers and everything. And all of a sudden they're like, I don't want to have this like thing that I have to be at 5 p.m. every Tuesday. And then like, so we lose a lot of them with that, but we're working on trying to change that. But what you're saying about the talent coming out of Santa Cruz, it is crazy. Like how many, like for how small a town, like how many like, you know, top level athletes in so many different sports come out of Santa Cruz. And now that, I mean, jiu-jitsu has changed a lot since when I was a kid. You know, when I was a kid, there wasn't even really like tournaments like there are now. Like we used to go, like we had our local tournaments. And then when I really fell in love with jiu-jitsu was when we started going down to LA and we did this tournament called Copa Pacifica. And it was like the big tournament. And then just the traveling with the team and getting all the guys together and going down there and hanging out outside of the mat, like that was big for me. And then also, do you know who Carlos Gracie is? He's Rickson Gracie's son. So Rickson Gracie was like,
you know, the Gracie kind of family, the lineage, right?
So Rickson was the champ of the Gracie family. He was the one that nobody could beat. And Crone was his son, and he was a purple belt. And he used to compete in the same division as this other guy, Bill Cooper. And we had a guy at the time, Ryan, I forget his last name. who was a purple belt in their division at the same time too.
Right.
So me like watching them and seeing like everybody in the stands getting all excited, and they fought like multiple times, and they had these big, and it looked like something different than what I was learning. It was all fancy and stuff, and I was like, whoa, and that's like really like what got me into it. But back then it was like, you go down there, they'd sit all the kids that were signed up on the mat, and then they just kind of eyeball and like, you 2 over here, you 3 over here, you 4 over there.
Like kind of disorganized, and
there just wasn't enough kids, you know, it was so small still. And so I got high in the belts. So I was like a yellow or an orange belt. So I'd have to go with a kid like 2 years older than me and like 30 pounds heavier. That was a white belt or whatever. And like now they've got like straight up organized divisions and, you know, weight classes and belt. And
I mean, even in the last couple of years, I've seen how much more organized they've gotten with the competitions and the tournaments and everything else like that. So I can imagine how unorganized it was back then.
Yeah,
So,
totally. No, it's like, I mean, it's gotten to a crazy level with like the IBJJF and everything. Now it's at such a high level with the kids that like, it's a whole other animal. And now you've got kids that are straight up like homeschooled just so that they can train twice a day. They look at jiu-jitsu as like a potential like career path, you know? So, and they're like, there's literally kids that train and like their parents do privates with the instructor every single day. And so that's why I want the kids to go out to this Vegas tournament because
oh my God, River really wants to do that. He's talking about that all the time.
It'll be, it'll be cool for all those reasons of them traveling to it together. But then they'll also, it's a 10,000 competitors signed up at the tournament. So, and it's a huge convention as well. So they'll kind of like open their eyes to like, oh, jiu-jitsu is like a lot bigger than just at my gym, you know? And then they'll, you know, they've been winning a lot of these local ones. Like a lot of them just got their gray belt at this. This was River's first gray belt tournament, the last one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then he won, right? So he won, and Dom won, and Marshall made it to the final.
I mean, Coalition 95 is always on the top of the leaderboard. It seems
yeah,
like. And I don't know if that's just up your volume and the way that you guys are doing it, but it's they're head and shoulders above a lot of the other gyms out there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But that's on the local level. So when we go out there, they're going to get their eyes open, you know, and it's going to be a good thing for them, you know, because they're going to see like, and they're going to be like, well, what can I do to beat that kid? And it's going to be like, you know, you got to train every day. Like these kids are training every day, and they're like really, and they have like Instagram with 50,000 followers at like 10 years old, you know, like they're already looking at it as like a career path. So I'm hoping that'll open their eyes. And we just recently open more kids classes. We got the Monday through Thursday and Saturday now, because it's like it's hard to want them to train more if we don't even have classes the rest of the time. So I'm trying to make that big step now to like.
And are you for competition? You know, and I've talked to other instructors in gyms, and they're just like, no, we don't want to compete. We don't want to compete. We don't want to be like, are you just for the sport itself? And I obviously have my own opinions, and just based on having a son kind of go through it, but like your thoughts on that. I can assume that that's based on what you just described is a benefit for the development of not only the sport, but the individual athlete.
Totally.
As well.
Yeah. I mean, my philosophy on competition is I've just seen lots of athletes and just practitioners. Like my goal as a coach is to try to encourage 100% of my students to compete, you know, knowing that only 10% or less of them actually will compete. But if I don't try to encourage 100% of them, then, you know, if I only encourage 10%, then only 1% will actually go. So, because, you know, and I tell all the guys, I'm like, you know, there's only a couple of you here that probably want to be like pro jiu-jitsu athletes one day, but every one of you wants to get better. And you see the guys that compete that have like, you know, a goal to work towards. And I say like the competition itself is worth like 2 months of training. Just that competition, one competition. And like with the kids, especially a lot of times in training, they're just like kind of talking and like, you know, whatever. And then you'll see this little like, like wheels turning, after they do a couple tournaments and like, oh no, like there's no talking, you know, and then they start going harder, and it just brings a whole different energy back in. So I think it's super important. Plus just, you know, life lessons about learning how to fail forward and, you know, and that's, I would still deal with that. I've got a student who, Travis, who he's like our little star brown belt. He's like the next one in line that's coming up. He's like 24, but he started with us when he was like 10 years old or something too. And he got to the brown belt, and he's feeling a lot of the same things that I felt at brown belt with this huge pressure. He's putting all this pressure on himself. And like last November, before our promotion ceremony, he was saying, I don't want to ever compete again. Like I'm just done with it. I don't want to do it. I'm not enjoying it anymore. And I was like, dude, like we can give you your black belt this year, and then you'll probably be one of like the 99% of guys with potential to be like a pro jiu-jitsu athlete that give up and are just the best guy at their gym and just teach and whatever. Or you can choose to stay another year at Brown
belt,
and prove to yourself that you don't give up, you know, and he chose to stay. And he's read a lot of books on like mental stuff and everything. And he's learned to take that pressure off of himself. And we just had a tournament this past Sunday and he won double gold. And the other tournament that he did this year, San Jose, which was like a month ago, double gold there too. Sick. And he beat a bunch of guys from Atos, like where the Ruotolos train and stuff. I was joking. I was like, hopefully they don't hear this, but I was like, they probably got like a picture of you up on the wall. They're probably like throwing darts at the picture because he's been like beating their guys this year. You know, he's lost to their guys too and stuff, but it's just, those are important things to learn. Like just because it's hard and it's not always fun, like, you know, got to keep going forward, you know?
We see that a lot in the surf community too. It's like a lot of people get into competing and then all of a sudden you have to make that decision because you're not winning every heat, right? And you're not making your heats and you're a really good surfer. And then you start kind of identifying yourself as that if you lose, right? And then all of a sudden surfing's not fun. And is there a way to continue to progress in surfing and compete in surfing while still understanding? And that's the growth, that's the mindset, that's everything, right? Like if you want to compete, you have to be able to kind of get through these downtimes and figure out a way to kind of get. And we had that a little bit with our older son Jet. I don't know if you've met him. I think he trained a little bit with you, but we took a little time off from surf competition, and I don't really know what his goals are with it. I think he just wants to get really good, and he's kind of more of a student of the technical aspect of it. So he likes coaching. He likes people to kind of show him what he's doing wrong with turns. But he quit surfing for a while because he lost, you know, his heats, and he's just so bummed. And I'm just like, dude, surfing, and maybe it's an analogy to, or maybe it's a parallel with jiu-jitsu too as well. It's like, it's fun, you know what I mean? And like, yes, the competition is part of it, right? And maybe a little bit different for BJJ, but like surfing, you can go out and have a killer time and not worry about competing at all. But if you want to be a competitor, you got to learn to get through those, not only just get through those heats, but deal with the losses and get back on that horse. Right?
Totally. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's another added layer to surfing of like, it's almost weird to make a competition out of surfing because it's kind of inherently, I mean, it is a competitive thing because if you're not competitive, you just don't get waves. But it's also like a weird thing where it's kind of more about like connection with, you know, so how do you, how do you quantify who won a surf heat, you know, and everything. And I can see that with the surfer being like, this is taken.
Even I struggle with the subjectiveness of it too, which is like the judging sport, all the judge sports, you know, they're so hard.
Totally.
Right? And especially with sports that are evolving so quick. It's like, is that maneuver, is it new, but is it harder? Is it better? You know, and like, how do we score that? And I'm sure the guys can speak on it a lot better than I can, but it just, the subjectiveness of it is gnarly for sure.
And not everybody gets this, you know, on a snowboard, they all go down the same run or whatever. And surfing, you might get the set wave of the day. And then it's like, was that guy really better? Or did he just kind of, was he lucky to be in the priority when that wave came? And it's definitely.
Whereas jiu-jitsu, sorry, there's no doubt, right? Like just, absolutely.
Well, it's still submission, right?
Yeah, but there's points and scoring. So there's a subjectivity in the reffing of it too. And jiu-jitsu is so complex that it's like, there's so many different rules and it comes down to all these different complexities of, you know, and there's a lot of subjectivity in how they can score a match too. So it does come down to some of that. But for me, it's like, you know, if you didn't dominate the guy and submit him, then you can't be really that mad if the calls didn't go your way. But what you were saying about not like identifying with that is like super huge. Like, and it took me a long time to learn that, to where like, I don't have to identify with my last result. I identify with my potential.
Right.
So as soon as I've proved to myself my potential, like I fought with the best guys in the world and I've won, I know that that's my potential. So I could go out tomorrow and get submitted in the first match, or I could go out for 10 tournaments in a row. Like even like when in this time that I've been dealing with my knee thing, I was like trying to go out and compete at times when I knew my knee wasn't good and I wasn't there 100%. And I got submitted like 3 out of 4 times, but also I know that I wasn't there 100% mentally. And I had a bunch of personal stuff, panic attacks, all this different stuff. And I was just trying to just like use the competition as a way to get through all of it, you know? And so I know that that's not me, but some people can't deal with that. They're just like, I suck. But I'm like, no, like I know what I'm like when I'm at my best, and to be able to identify with that potential that you have, that'll get you through all of that, you know, so you never, because some people just can't do that, man. Like just whatever their last, you know, thing was, it's, you know, if I win, I'm the best. If I lost, I'm the worst, you know, and that's an important lesson that people learn through competition too, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you train that with the young guy? Like, do you start pretty early with that? Or is that just something someone either naturally has?
How do you instill that?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
Like, how do you teach that? It's a pretty big life lesson.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, the more the kids are into competition, the more that we have to have those kinds of talks with them and stuff. If they keep competing long enough, then we'll have the opportunity. But you see, even like Travis, because the kids don't necessarily like internalize it to the same level as you do once you become an adult. So they do, but it's more like a, you know, once they get past it and then they go watch like, you know, Teletubbies or whatever afterward, they're kind of like pretty much, they don't carry it with us as adults. We like carry that baggage from this last tournament and whatever. And so it's
ego.
Like, totally.
Ego, right?
Yeah. And that's what I'm like dealing with Travis now and stuff. And like, you know, and I told him, I'm like, dude, I'm super proud of you because you've performed really well at these last 2 tournaments. But I'm not proud of you because you won.
Right.
I'm proud of you because you performed. You could have gone out there and performed well in that and lost your first match, and I would have been just as proud of you, you know, because I'm like, you're riding this high now if you've won these last 2 matches. But eventually he could go undefeated this last year at brown belt. But he's going to lose at some point. Everyone loses at some point. So you have to learn how to still be just as proud of yourself even after that.
You're talking about process. Process, right?
Totally.
And I see you actually talk about it a lot online as far as training the right way, right? And being true to the sport. As a newbie, I have no idea what that means. Like, I really, I mean, I follow it. I love what you're saying, but I don't truly understand. Is the sport itself, obviously the explosion of it, right? Is it the development? Is it different? Is it changing? Like, what do you mean by that? I guess
it's changing a lot, and not necessarily in a direction that I'm like super stoked with.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
It's
how come?
I think in America, there's kind of an aversion to like, you know, like a lot of so jiu-jitsu came from Japan, right? So in Brazil, it lost a lot of like the traditional elements of it. Like jiu-jitsu used to be illegal for you to teach anyone that wasn't Japanese, you know, and then Count Koma taught it to the Brazilians. And he learned from Jigoro Kano, who was the guy that invented judo. So Jigoro Kano turned the original jiu-jitsu into judo. So they basically learned like a jiu-jitsu that was midway through transforming into judo, and then they realized they started moving more away from sport and more into Vale Tudo, or like no holds barred. And they realized when you put 2 guys together and they fight and no one's there to separate it, they end up on the ground the most of the time and no one stands them back up. So the Brazilians started focusing a lot on that,
on the ground
game. So then it kind of started developing into what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it lost some of those traditional Japanese elements. So like all this stuff of like the master and bow your way into the mat and all of that comes from the Japanese, the original Japanese. And if you look at judo, it's a lot more rigid, like a lot more rigid. And so like even like there's a really famous judo athlete, like I think Olympic silver medalist Brazilian, Flavio Canto. He's actually friends with Cláudio. I see him down there quite a bit when I go to Rio. He says how judo's not really a lifestyle like jiu-jitsu is, which is what I think the surfers kind of identify with jiu-jitsu is like, it's the same way where it can be competitive, but it's also a lifestyle. It's also something that you can do until like my dad still trains and he's 73.
It's an art. It's an art. It's a lifestyle and an art.
You don't really see anybody 73 still like really training judo, you know? And so, and when you go to a training in judo, it's like, you know, it's kind of more like wrestling, like wrestling isn't really, I don't want to see wrestling's not a lifestyle because I'm sure people do live the wrestling lifestyle, but it's like, you can't find a wrestling gym, you know, where just like people come and just train wrestling because it's like, you're either training for the Olympics or you're training for MMA, or there's not really any room for that, for you to just come in and just train it just to have fun, you know? And that kind of came from like the relaxation around a lot of that like rigidness from judo and stuff. So it became more of like a, hey, let's come in. But the Brazilians still maintained a lot of that traditions from like the judo thing, right? So then when it came to the States, here they really don't, like, they love to take the thing, but then take everything, all that out of it, you know, right. Make it into a product and take all of that out of it, you know, because and even for me now, it's like, you know, how much do I try to make sure that I make this guy into like a real black belt and make sure that he respects jiu-jitsu and respects the art, because a lot of that comes down to, hey, if you don't want to respect it, then walk away. Right. But then I lose his monthly membership. So a lot of instructors don't care about that. Yeah. So, and it's kind of, to me, like, it's kind of like, you know, the kid at elementary school, like running for class president. And he's like, you know, if you like me, we're going to have recess all day and, you know, no more homework. And then it's like, all the kids are going to vote for him, but is that really what's going to get you the most out of going to school? You know? So it's important, like a lot of the character development and a lot of the discipline that you get out of it is from the, hey, I have to show respect to the higher belts. I have to bow my way into the mat. I have to, you know, respect my master, be loyal to my master, and all of that stuff. And so it's getting, and a lot of that is becoming demonized online. So they'll be like, hey, do you have to bow at your school? Do you have to, you know, ask to leave the mat to go get water? Do you have to like sit in a certain way? Like you're supposed to sit with your legs crossed, right? That's not just a random thing. That's because if you're sitting with your legs out, somebody could trip on your legs or land on your knee. If you're sitting up tall with your legs crossed, you're better to pay attention, and also you can defend yourself better. So, and don't leave the mat to just go to the bathroom randomly or go off to get water. It's because if you've got a good instructor, he's counting on you in class. So he's like factoring you into the class, and then all of a sudden, where did this guy go? And where did that guy? And then the person comes back on, oh, what are we doing? You know, so it's all about trying to make it work better, you know, but it's like those kids at the, you know, elementary school kids are gonna be like, well, if this guy over here says I don't have to do that stuff, I'm going to train there, you know? And that's why there's a big movement towards no gi now, because when you take the gi off, like the gi guys have always said, you need to be good in gi and no gi, but there's a big movement for no gi only now. And when you take the gi off, you don't only change the sport, but you also lose pretty much all of that. Because if you're not wearing a belt, then all of a sudden the belt doesn't mean anything to you. All those things don't seem like they make any sense. And so that's kind of the direction that things are like going in. And I don't really like that very much myself.
It's competition and filling your gym. That's what that's doing, right? Yeah. Interesting. I mean, again, the parallels with baseball too, we talk about it a lot. Like more and more, we're seeing the generations that are coming up as coaches that didn't really understand how to respect the game, right? Like the way that you carry yourself on the field, the way, you know, all the small, subtle discipline type things that make the sport gets lost in the competition, right? And not just the competition, but the individual branding. And that's the toughest thing. I mean, I don't know if you can say the same thing about BJJ, but like everyone is their own individual brand now. Like it's crazy. Like obviously you see it in college sports kind of, et cetera, but it's especially team sports, is they're really, really losing that kind of traditional aspect. Yeah. That team aspect of it, because everyone's out for themselves. And so like when you say it's a community and it's an art and it's a lifestyle and it's a discipline, like most kids are, and I don't want to throw them all out there, but like most of them are just in it for themselves, right? And trying to, especially as they get more, you know, recognition and accolades, that they're just there from themselves, right? And that's not obviously good for the sport either, right? So.
Well, and then imagine in jiu-jitsu where it is like a individual sport, but really you need your team, and then there's all the whole lineage. And if you ask people now in the States, like, what does your lineage mean to you? They'd be like, nothing. You know, but it's like, you know, my lineage means a lot to me. It was like, you know, Count Coma, Helio Gracie, Francisco Mansor, Cláudio França, me, you know, and that's important to me, you know, but people like, they don't even care anymore. And it's like, you know, jiu-jitsu didn't just like show up in the States, and it came through this whole pipeline, and all that is important too, but
you were walking in, I heard you speaking Portuguese.
Oh
I think you knew you did, but I hadn't heard you speak it. That's something obviously you picked up super early when you went out there. And how old were you when you went out there?
I went out there for the first time when I was 17.
Okay.
But I stayed with the guy, Paul Schreiner. He's he was a black belt under Cláudio, but he teaches for Marcelo Garcia down in LA now. But at that first time I stayed mostly with the Americans and kind of didn't really learn too much Portuguese. That was the only time I did like one or two Portuguese lessons, and I listened to some like Rosetta Stone and stuff, but I picked up just like a little bit. But then after that I started staying with Brazilian friends, and Cláudio was bringing up instructors to try to keep, so I was getting like older and tougher too. So then he started bringing out black belts because he runs tournaments as well. So then they would teach in his place so he could focus on the tournaments, but then also keep like high level jiu-jitsu, like fresh from Brazil, like in the gym, and have people for me to train with and stuff. And they would live at my house. So, and then I was just like, I didn't have any friends groups outside of jiu-jitsu, so I was just hanging with them like all year, and then I'd spend like 2 months in Rio with their family, and then just going back and forth, and then eventually just picked it up.
Oh, killer. I mean, to see the culture like that too was pretty. You go back often, or what?
Yeah, I'm going down next month on the 29th. We're running a camp down there.
Killer.
So we do that like
through
twice
Cláudio or
Gotcha. Yeah, if anybody listening or whatever wants to go to Rio, we go, and we train at a different gym every night, and then we take them around to see all the sites in Rio and go to the beach and eat at all the best restaurants, and it's super fun time.
Killer. One of my friends, I just found out he trained and went out there with, and kind of left-hand turn, but I'm curious where he is on this lineage with Helson.
Oh, nice.
Gracie. Yeah, where is Helson in that family?
So Helson is Helio Gracie's son.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
it was Count Coma, Helio Gracie,
and then
Helson. I actually competed against Helson's son.
Oh, no way.
Before, Holland.
It's kind of funny what you said. You see these 70, he showed me videos of Helson still going, and the guy's like just such an artist at 70, like whatever, 4 years old. I don't know what he is right now,
character.
But
he'll still be like, I got in a fight on the street the other day. Like oh my God, he's a character.
It's and I watched some videos on him too, and it's such an art, and there's so many different ways that you can approach it, because you obviously are strong, right? And it doesn't mean that. And I look at a guy like him, right, who's just super like thin and skinny, and just flows, and you do the same thing with your strength. Like, how much does that have anything to do with it? Like being
strength over
technique. Exactly. Strength overtaking. Because I understand that the weight, everything is kind of weight based, right? But is it at some point a problem, or is it, for the most part pretty beneficial just to be as strong as you can as well? I know technique wins over anything, right?
And intuition. How much does intuition play in, right?
Yeah, all those things play in. I mean, I was a lightweight for most of my career. I competed at 168. And then as I got closer to 30, I started gaining more weight, and then gaining more, and I've been getting kind of bigger and bigger since then. But for most of my career, I was lightweight, and I would compete because in jiu-jitsu competitions, you have your weight class, and then you have the absolute division. So that absolutes all the weights together. So you see the little guys beat the big guys a lot, and I would always compete the absolute divisions as a lightweight. And like even Travis, he did that absolute division this last week, and his hardest match was against a guy that was like a super feather, like 150, maybe less than that. And that kid, he beat an ultra heavy guy in the fight before that. So ultra heavy's over 220, but the guy's probably more than that, like probably 230, 240. And the kid was just so good, like nobody could do anything to him. Travis ended up beating him on a small margin, but he beat other guys that were a lot bigger than him by a lot bigger margin. So you can but if you take two guys that are similar level, then the strength and the size is going to make a difference, more of a difference.
Right.
But you can make up for a lot more of a deficit in size and strength through technique than you can make up for a deficit in technique through size and strength.
Yeah.
But it all matters, you know, and I wouldn't say that the size ever necessarily would hold you back.
Right.
Like, you know, like you see the guys that win the absolute at the black belt, they're usually like medium heavy, heavy, super heavy, ultra heavy, somewhere up there. But you do see little guys, you know, go with the best of the guys at the highest level, big guys, and still take it to them and win and everything. So they're all factors, but technique is definitely the one that matters the most.
You're seeing that. I mean, in the evolution of surfing, like we've never seen before the amount of kind of training, dryland training that kind of goes into surfing. Obviously through, I think, big names like the Billy Kempers of the world, you know, out there who are training and showing what they're doing. Like the next generation is starting to do a lot more, recognizing that they're in it kind of for the long game. And it's a fine balance because I see it too. And I get, you know, surfers in my office all the time that maybe overtrain, right? And are injuring themselves in dryland, and some that don't train at all and are doing aerial maneuvers or riding big waves and they don't have an ounce of muscle, you know, kind of on their bones. And so we're kind of in that early evolution of like, where does this belong? We do know that it belongs, but how much, you know, in regards. And obviously same thing with, I'm sure jiu-jitsu too, as well, as it's like, you're spending so much time on the mat. And it's like, how much time are you going to be dedicating to you know, cross training or lifting or doing anything else on it? And
you don't want to get too big, right? Because then you're not going to be as nimble. Or I mean, is there something, can you get too big?
I mean, you look at the jiu-jitsu guys at the highest level, they're all jacked, you know, they're all huge. And I think that this, like, you're going to get big and you're going to lose your flexibility isn't necessarily a thing. If you're like, I know some really big jack guys that are real flexible too. So I don't think that's as much of a thing.
I think of it more as like injury prevention, honestly, like especially in the surf world. And you know, I'm new to BJJ, and so we'll continue to learn, but I see it more so as just injury prevention. And that's why I think we're more endurance, of course, and longevity and being able to do your sport for longer. But to me, it's, you know, you've heard it before too. It's body armor for the joints. And any way we can kind of build up support and strength around the joints, and then there's a better chance that you aren't going to get hurt.
That's been a big question for me over the course of my career, is how much I should be lifting and how much does that steal away from my training. Now the guy that's helping me with my weightlifting is the guy that does the strength and conditioning for the guys at Atos.
Okay, killer.
So, and he says one of the big things that is kind of BS that guys will do is like try to recreate the stimulus of jiu-jitsu in the weight room. So like have you do jiu-jitsu movements and it's like you're doing that in jiu-jitsu. So nothing can be more similar to jiu-jitsu than just doing it. So what you're supposed to be doing in the gym is gaining attributes that you can't gain just
isolating,
from jiu-jitsu.
right? Isolating.
Exactly. Explosion, strength, and all that. So he's got me on like a 3-day lifting plan right now. Yeah. That's what.
How long have you been working with him?
I've only been working with him since my surgery.
Yeah.
So I kind of hit him up around the beginning of my surgery, and he's been helping me like know what to do while I'm work around not being able to use this leg and everything. But surfing is a little different because it's almost like in board sports, it's kind of like an advantage to be lighter because you can go higher and everything. Like what's that one really tall dude that busted that super sick air like a year or two ago?
Maybe look it up. Was that up on the North Shore as well?
I can't remember where it was. It was like a crazy like 360. What's the dude's name? I can't remember what his name is now, but he's like super tall and it's just crazy, like seeing how high he got because you know how tall he actually is.
Yeah, exactly. And and there's a lot of, you know, big surfers, and traditionally big surfers were power surfers, right? Like big, long, arcing downturns and, you know, big sprays and that sort of thing. But now that they're boosting and kind of getting into the air, it's like, okay, well, how explosive can you be while still maintaining a little bit of that like mobility and nimbleness, you know, the nimbleness of being able to kind of like land the maneuver and then flow right into kind of a turn on it. Because I've seen it, where it's just so rigid and you're not as flowy as you need to be kind of on the wave.
Oh, is it Jamie O'Brien? Is he big?
Jamie's lost. Actually, Jamie's been training a lot. He's over the last year. I mean, he's kind of one of the best guys out there at Pipe, but he's recently, I think about a year now, is kind of, I don't know if it was injury or maybe just a shift in getting a little bit older, is that he's really taken his health and his training kind of seriously. And I think he dropped a lot of weight kind of recently. Yeah.
I forget which guy it was, but I was impressed with how high he got. But and Kelly was also one of the guys, right, that kind of was the beginning of like, hey, like, the old school surfing thing was like, we're going to party all night and then go surf the next day. Like the Andy Irons, show up all like messed up and still win the competition. And now it's like the guys are like, no, we got to train like pro athletes.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, he proved it out, right? And multiple people kind of behind, after him kind of proved it out too. And it's, like you said, it's also, and I obviously would never speak in the sense that I understand, but just through enough conversation and seeing the sport through my patients and athletes and friends, kind of, et cetera. It's just, there's a combination of being, like you said, present and one with the ocean, and being so connected out there that you're performing the perfect maneuver in the perfect section, versus, training and, being able to kind of, almost like physically will yourself into this position. I think there's a healthy balance, and it's got to be a combination of both, right? Like, yes, the talent, and so I think a lot of people, or at least previous kind of surfers, relied on more of that connection, with the ocean, as opposed to the actual like, okay, physical training and the strict regimens and the strict diets, and I also think that there's a shift in recognizing themselves. Like, I think with BJJ, there's no doubt, right? These are athletes, and I'd say a lot of, especially young surfers, they look at themselves as surfers, not athletes. If that makes sense. And it's a small distinction, but in my world, like, surfers are very much athletes, just like jiu-jitsu, are as well. And so getting them to start thinking about themselves in that light has been a huge challenge for me, but also a shift that you're starting to see. And I think there is momentum coming, and more younger surfers are really recognizing that too, is that you can have both, right?
Yeah. So, well, they're pushing farther and farther too. Like, they're going into bigger waves and all that. It's like, it seems like that starts to be a bigger physical demand on you too.
It is, man. And it's crazy because you get these athletes that are, they come in like whatever, young 20s, mid 20s, and are surfing the biggest waves in the world and the most critical, and the waves of consequence. And then they injure themselves, and it's like they've never been injured before. And so all of a sudden, just like they don't even know how to, they have no direction. They have no, it's a scary world, I think, in all athletes, but especially for some reason, surfers, right? Because I think up until you start surfing those waves of consequence, there really isn't a whole lot, right, that can go wrong, as opposed to, and I'll probably have you talk a little bit more of that's in jiu-jitsu, where you kind of learn to deal with what's an injury and what's, what's just pain, right?
Are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I heard an injury.
Huge,
and so I like to say, like, what is your relationship with that, right? Because some patients are just like, I don't even know what to do. I'm hurt, and even some local professional surfers are like, I've never been injured. I don't know what to do. I don't know if this is bad. I don't know if this is good. Like, and just kind of go numb, right? Or they just kind of like freeze a little bit. Whereas I don't see that with my BJJ athletes. I feel like they develop a relationship with injury.
with pain,
that makes sense. Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, right. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that, like, we always say, like, if you don't have some injury when you go to compete, then you didn't train. Like, that's the only way that you're going to show up 100% injury free at any competition. Like, you're always going to see the guy with a taped up hand or a taped up foot, or you don't know what injury it is, but there's always something that you're working through. Otherwise you didn't train for the tournament, so there is definitely a line of, like, or even just what you're saying with overtraining is like, when am I, having diminishing returns because I'm pushing through it too much, and when and a lot of that for me was learning how much being out of camp is as important as being in camp, because I like the same thing, like, I've always had a hard time when I wasn't able to be going full out to not be doing nothing either, you know. And back when I used to drink too, it would be like, okay, I can't drink when I'm coming up to a tournament. I would go like 6 months with no drinking, but now I'm injured for 2 months. Okay, so now I'm not going to train at all, and I'm just going to party every day. And then you come back to it and you're like, you got to work all the way back up just to like a baseline before you can even make any improvement. And your body kind of adapts to what you're putting it through. So, like, even when people are coming to start to train, and a lot of people be like, oh, I need to get in shape before I start training or whatever. It's like, no, you just need to come train and you'll get in shape. And then, like, people are like, oh, I want to lift for training. And I'm like, it's better for you to try to like work up, start with like 1 day a week, maybe 2. And then once your body can handle that, go to 3. And then once your body can handle that, maybe go to 4 until you found like how much you ideally want to train, and your body can handle that. Cause when you first start training, you're just going to feel wrecked after one training. But eventually it's even the same for me with like CrossFit. If I don't do CrossFit for a while and then I go do one,
right,
I'll be like, and then I'll see these guys that are like 45, you know, and they're like doing it every day. I'm like, how do you guys do this every day? And it's like,
you got to build up to it.
They do it every day, you know? Yeah. And if I keep doing it, then after a while, like there was a time where I wasn't able to train, but I was able to do CrossFit. And then I was doing it every day. I didn't even get sore really, you know? So your body kind of adapts to that. And then if out of camp, you're still trying to keep your routine kind of as similar to in camp as possible, then when you get back into camp, your body's still like, you know, adapted to be able to do that. So, you know, that's a hard, you got to work up to it. You got to, kind of know what your threshold is, but it really is like a hard thing of like, you know, is this an injury that I should push through? Should I take time off? And for me, it's like,
it's kind of trial and error, right? You figure it out as you go, like, oh, this typically will get better in a few weeks or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I have like one kid that trains and he's constantly injured. And I'm like, bro, you're 22. It's impossible that you're injured this much. I'm like, that just hurts. Like you need to train through that. Like if you can't train through it, like you're never going to be able to train, but it's a hard thing.
And that was my, I mean, like, I joke, man, like everyone in my circle is so sick of me talking about getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, including my nurse practitioner. I don't know if I told you this, but she's the one who actually got the lessons, the privates with Nate. Yeah. And she was just like, cause I've been talking about it for so long and I see a lot that come through my office with injuries and including conversations that we've had. And I'm just like, it's not that I don't mind injury. I don't mind getting hurt. I deal with it. I know every way to optimize, obviously, in the things I'm doing in daily life. So I'll give myself stem cells. I'll give myself PRP and peptides and all these things. But like, I can't get derailed to where I can't perform the things that keep me going, which is my practice, my family, you know, as a dad and that sort of thing. And so she got me private lessons, and finally I reached out to Nate, and I would say absolutely stoked to keep doing it with you. Definitely surprised with how it started, because she started with, and everyone I kind of mostly met, it started with the classes. So they learned the warm-ups and the rolls and everything else like that. And we're going kind of straight into technique. And I know you're going to get us kind of sparring here at some point. Not that I'm rushing or pushing to do that by any standard.
Baby steps.
But baby steps. But it definitely is, you know, is a surprise. Not that obviously we aren't learning the technique, but I always assumed that it was just like, you were tired as a dog afterward, you know what I mean? Worn out and just like beat up and kind of, is that necessary? Is that when I get to the classes? Like what is like, when does, and it doesn't have to happen, but does that happen at some point? Right.
Yeah. I mean, the old school way of training was like, you would do this big warm up that was like a workout where you like run around the mat a bunch of times. But like, you know, jiu-jitsu's gone through an evolution, kind of like surfing has, where it used, the old school like philosophy was anything that you did outside of jiu-jitsu was going to take away from your jiu-jitsu. So like if you ask Claudio, he'll be like, you know, oh, like you shouldn't really do much weightlifting or don't get too heavy or don't lift too much weight. And so the jiu-jitsu class was kind of meant to be like, but then there's also the aspect of like, you know, people like to compare like a wrestling training to a jiu-jitsu training a lot, but they're not really comparable, because you'd have to like compare like a wrestling training with like a competition training at Atos. Because everybody doing wrestling is a competitor, and they're, you know, in their late teens, early 20s, and they're like, you know, and when you got a class like that I teach, it's mostly guys in their 40s or 50s, you know, and so it's a little bit different. And back in the day, it wasn't necessarily as commercial a thing. It was more like, oh, if you're going to train, like it's got to be tough. You know, if you don't survive, then you didn't deserve it. You know, and now it's becoming more of a thing where it's like, okay, we want everyone to stick around, and I also just want everyone to be able to get something out of jiu-jitsu. You know, so we do the training like.
I like it, man. I like going straight to drilling. I can warm up. You know what I mean? I can warm up, and we can do the official, you know, BJJ warm-ups if we need to. But you and I and Nick, we go straight to the drilling, which I love. Let's start learning. And so we're not wasting a whole lot of time. We got an hour with you. You know, it's like, let's get straight to it.
Well, that's what I figure. You know, it's like if you're doing a private lesson, like I could run you guys around the mat for a half hour, and then you get a half hour technique. But it's like, I'd rather you guys get, you know, the most out of it possible. But when we start going live, then we'll definitely want to get you a little warmer before you go live. But that's the thing, like even in the regular class now, So I try to make my class, even in the regular class, 100% jiu-jitsu. So we do a little stretch, and then we do some rolls, but I don't do the old school, like run around the mat and then do a bunch of jumping jacks and push-ups and do this whole workout. Cause it used to be like, you're going to come and train here and you don't have to go to CrossFit. And like nowadays people are going to the gym and they're lifting already. So it's like, they don't want to come into class and then be made to do a bunch of push-ups when they already did that
they
today.
Want to learn technique,
so they're there for jiu-jitsu. So we do warm up through jiu-jitsu. So we'll do jiu-jitsu drills to get warm, and then we work on a technique, and then we do some type of specific sparring from that technique. And then now what we do in class is we end the class before sparring. And then we allow people to leave if they want, because I want people to be able to come, and even if they don't want it, if they're afraid of getting injured, but they just want to learn jiu-jitsu or whatever, take a few months without sparring, I want them to have the option of doing that, which didn't really used to be an option. It's like if you were there, you had to spar. And so now it's like, if you were to come to class, you could come and do the whole class, and then sparring part comes, and then you could leave, or you could do one sparring, and then eventually two, and then and that's where the feeling beat up that comes from when you start doing the sparring part of class. So as soon as you guys want to start doing the specific sparring, that's a good way to work into sparring, because it's more controlled and I can make sure that it doesn't get wild. But the main thing, like where most injuries come from, is in that little beginning part where your technique's not refined yet, and especially if you're going with someone else who their technique's not refined yet, and then it gets like wild. You know? Like I can train real hard with another black belt and not likely to injure each other, you know, but two white belts going together, that's what's
why is that? Just because you're not as, you might be over do a powerful move.
No, you're just wrestling. You don't really know. You don't have body control. I feel like, you don't really understand what you're doing at all, right?
You're not smooth and you're not deliberate with your motions. So that's what I try to tell people is like, you got to keep your level of explosion in direct relation to your level of technique. So once you pass a certain threshold, you can go full explosion while still maintaining deliberateness of motion and smoothness. But when you don't know enough, it's like trying to do like some type of, I don't know, like a golf swing or something that you don't know how to do and trying to do it fast.
Like you got air.
Or grabbing a baseball bat and just just like swinging as hard as you can. Right?
An air you probably have to do fast, I guess. So you gotta have some speed behind it to do an air.
No, I get that for sure. And I think I lucked out obviously with Nick too as a partner. I think that we match each other really, really well. He's had some background in it as well, but he's kind of going in it for the same reain I am. And just super grateful to have you being able to help us guide us through that as well. And I'm not pushing to do anything quicker than I need to. I just had articulated a little bit different than I kind of expected. I'm just kind of go in as a blank canvas and just we'll follow your guide, sensei. Whatever you say.
I mean, the fun part is the sparring. That's the thing with like some gyms, they don't even let you spar until like 3 months into your training. So you have to come only to beginners classes where it's only technique. And we don't do that because my fear is that people will get bored with that, you know, because like when you really fall in love with it is that first time that you spar with somebody and you're like, okay, this is fun. This is like, you know, this is like surfing. It's like catching your first wave or whatever. You're like, ooh, this is fun. Like I like to do that. So I'm afraid of like being like, you have to do, you know, or somebody might come in with some wrestling experience or judo or whatever. And like, so like, really, I can't spar for 3 months. So we don't make that mandatory, but it is good to have a little bit of technique. So you at least know what to try to do. And then I try to tell people it's important how you fail. Just like expect that you're probably going to fail. Right. That's the hard thing for people is because they're like, well, when I do what coach tells me to do, and I turn down my explosion and I try to focus on technique, I lose. So I'm going to go back to going. And it's like, well, it's better for you to lose trying the right technique than it is even to win spazzing, you know? So once you have a few techniques that you can try to do and you kind of understand, that's why we talked about the ladder of positions. Because you have to.
I love that.
What's the ladder of?
The ladder of positions is the progression that jiu-jitsu positions go in. So it's like you're climbing a ladder. It's not like other martial arts, like striking. Both people are always in the same position in striking. They're both standing in front of each other and they both got 2 hands and 2 feet and they're trying to hit each other. So they're always even. The power of jiu-jitsu is that you're making a progression of positions.
Getting position. Yeah.
Until you have the person in a place where you have all the advantages and they have none. So if you understand the progression of positions, so it would be the very bottom would be mount or back. So the guy's on my back or mounted on me. One step up is any type of control where he's controlling you only with his upper body, but not his legs. So if he was controlling me from the side, right, or like a knee on belly or a north-south or anything like that, where he's out here, but he hasn't wrapped his legs around me yet, either from the front or the back.
A level below.
That's, that's one level up for me. Yeah, so that's a little bit better. And then the next would be I'm still on the bottom, but now I'm controlling him with my legs in some fashion, either one leg or even both legs open, but my legs are in between me and him, or I've wrapped both my legs around him. So now I'm still on the bottom, but I'm in the guard. Right. That's much better than him being past my legs. Then even would be both of us standing, of course, and then the ladder flips now. So now me on top, but he's still got his legs around me, then me past his legs, but I haven't been able to pass my legs over him, and then me on either the mount or the back. So once you kind of understand that, then everything that you learn kind of plugs into somewhere on that. And it's all, everything you learn is going to be how to just take the next step up. So if you have that kind of mentality when you go to train, you can just try to do that and slow it down and work on that, and realize that failing forward, trying to do the right things is better than just flailing. And, you know, even if you were to win better flailing, it's better to slow it down and just try the technique, you know?
That's what my buddy Chris under Helson, he said, Mossy, when I told him I was going to train with you, this is before he even started, he's like, 2 pieces of advice: tap early, tap often. You just don't just tap early and tap often, Mossy. And so
that's a big one.
Yeah. I will get there for sure.
And also partner selection.
Yeah.
It's the dynamic when you have the ladder unevenness. That's when you see the majority of the injuries. Or is there a certain move, or I guess when you got injured, what do you think that was? When too?
So, well, the first thing you asked, I would say that when the most injuries happen is when that ratio of technique to explosiveness is out of whack.
Yeah.
You know, so that's when, like, if I am moving so fast that I can't move fast enough to also be deliberate and smooth with my motion, then that's when I accidentally elbow him, you know. And that's a good way for you to know if that ratio is out of whack. Because if you're catching your partner with an elbow, that probably means you're moving too fast for how deliberate you're being with your motion. And that also could look like me spinning in a certain way that I twist my knee the wrong way or whatever. And that's where most injuries come from. But then injuries can come from anything, you know, just like any type of sport. You know, you could be playing soccer and fall down and tweak your leg or whatever. And so my knee injury just came from that. I was just trying to do a sweep, and the guy was spinning in a way to try to not accept the sweep, and my leg got caught up in the gi and it just twisted it. And it was just like a kind of a freak thing. But, you know, I was training twice a day and competing, like, from 10 years old to 28 when I first had that. And that, other than one time I got thrown and dislocated my elbow, that was a gnarly one, but that was just another one of those like freak things.
Right.
But other than that, I never had a serious injury, you know, across all that time, and not like never taking a break from anything except for being injured. You know, I had like a little rib thing, or, you know, like a twisted ankle, but, you know, I think any other sport, if you were doing it for that long, that hard, you'd probably have a longer list of serious injuries than that, you know.
That's a good way to frame it. You were grateful. You're grateful that you didn't have anything until this one.
I was.
Yeah. And that was in what, 18 or something like that?
2018.
Yeah. That was the first ACL that you did. Did you try to keep going on that? I can't remember. I saw the follow-up MRI. I think it was like in 2022 or 23. I can't remember that. But I didn't really hear the backstory on that ACL, like the original one. Did you try to keep going on that one, or did you got it fixed right away?
So with that one, I was in camp for Worlds, and I hurt my knee like the week before Worlds. So, and it seems that injuries always happen when you're like not fully locked in. Like it's always like, that's why I say like it's better almost for you to go hard once you know how to train than it is for you to kind of go like halfway, you know, like once you get to a certain level that you can go hard, like safely, because when you're distracted or you're kind of just not really there, that's usually when the injuries happen. Because you're not protecting yourself. When you're like two guys that know what they're doing are going hard at each other, injuries don't usually happen, you know. And it was like we had kind of already stopped training, and then my buddy's like, one more. And it's always that like one more that you weren't gonna do, you know. And then like, and it was like the week before we were just about to start turning down the training to just like focus on weight and coast into worlds, and that's when the injury happened. So I didn't have time to like get in for an MRI and get it read.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so then I was like, and I like could squat, I could do everything. I'm like,
that's the thing about the ACLs, man. It's like once you get through that initial pop, and then there's this bone bruise that happens, and sometimes you stretch the MCL or bruise the meniscus or things like that. Once that kind of dust settles, the knee actually feels pretty normal, right? Like it's like, this feels pretty good, until you kind of plant and twist, and you're like, oh, it shouldn't go that far. It shouldn't twist that far. So I got a lot of patients that come in way after their ACLs, and they're like, I'm really signing up for surgery right now because I feel really, really good, you know. And you probably felt that too, right?
Totally, yeah. That's what I felt was the bone bruise. I felt like some pain on the outside of my knee. So that's why I was like, people like, oh, it's probably the LCL or whatever. And people always give you some like, you know, harebrained diagnosis.
So you notice to text me now. Like,
exactly.
No, everyone's got an opinion, right?
Yeah. I was on a good stretch that year too. So I was just like, you know, I'm just going to do the tournament. Like, and my mom's like, what are you doing? You're going to do that? I'm like, well, I didn't train this hard and cut all this weight to like not do it. So then I went out and competed. And then 2 times in the match, like when the guy tried to sweep me and I stepped my foot down really hard, I just felt my knee just go whoop,
shift. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's not right. And then like the medics came out twice, but I made it to the end of the match. The guy only beat me by two points, and I kind of almost got him in a choke in the end, but if I would have beat him, I probably wouldn't have been able to do the next match anyway. So it was better that he got through. But
grapplers are built different, though. You know, like, you don't see too many other sports where they're out there like, I'm gonna get through this one first as well. So,
and I got the surgery after that and everything, and then it was good for a few years, and then I ended up hurting.
You kicked ass after that, didn't you?
Yeah, I was doing good after that.
Yeah, you recovered. You bounced back really quick from that, and probably, I mean, hit your stride. You were better than you were before, right?
That was my best stretch of my career was after that. Yeah,
I saw that.
But I'm also trying to think like, what am I going to do differently this time though? Because I was like, I came back to competition 2019, and then I heard it again in 2022. So I'm like, I don't want to make this like a every 3 years thing, you know? Like,
do you think that was something you did though? Like, or do you think it's just another freak sort of thing? Like this follow up, you know, injury.
Yeah, that one didn't really feel like anything gnarly either. It was again like, maybe it was that thing that I was saying was like, I was like kind of, it was on the camp. So I wasn't really like training super hard, and I was going with this tiny little guy. Maybe it just wasn't there 100% mentally. And he just like did this weird thing where he like chopped his leg and pulled on my pants, and it just popped. It was like super weird and like didn't feel like any big deal, you know? But
and you got your meniscus too.
That happened later because
you kept going on it. Let's look at it.
Well, that was the kind of the insurance's fault though, because they're like, because like you're saying, a lot of times you'll feel better, you'll feel okay. So then they're like, try to go to PT. And I'm like, why would I try to go to PT if I don't know? And later I thought, I'm like, I should have just hit up Dr. Stidham, because he would have got me the MRI.
MRI imaging,
But they're like, go to PT and see if it feels. So I go to PT, they're like, run, jump, squat, and I can do all these things. So they're like, why do you need MRI? I'm like, because I know that I don't have an ACL.
Right.
So then I went another 2 years on it, and
I didn't know that. Shit.
I went another 2 years on it, and then I just tore the meniscus.
Well, that's
and
what led to the
other
meniscus.
Bro, that is such a topic in of itself, and something that I fight against every single day, right? Is that insurance kind of piece of it, where it's just like, well, no, you got to do 6 weeks and 3 months of this and this month of this in order to kind of justify an MRI. And then look where it got you, like more injuries and that sort of stuff. And it's just like, if they had just kind of covered that, like authorized that at the beginning, like I'm just a huge fan of like, get the information and the data. I don't care. Like, you know, I think the difference is, I think between providers is what do you do with that information, right? And just because someone has an injury or tear, something that kind of pops up on the MRI, it doesn't necessarily mean surgery, right? And so I think that there's this fear, not just from providers, but also from patients and athletes, that if I get an MRI that shows something, then I'm gonna have to have a procedure or surgery. I don't look at it like that, man. I look at it like, get the information and then build a plan about, you know, around whatever you have. I don't care if it is PT, right? I don't care if it's peptides. I don't care if it's stem cells. I don't care if it's surgery. I don't care if it's just rest for 2 weeks and it's going to get better. the more you know earlier on, the better your outcome is going to be kind of moving forward. And it's just like, and so that's why in my practice, I'm just like, and my team and staff know, like someone comes in, like I don't even want to see them until they have an MRI. Get it done. You know, I want them to come in and let's have a real conversation. Not like, yeah, your knee's swollen. I think it's this. We're probably gonna do this. Let's go to an MRI and wait, 3 months. Like, let's just make it happen and get it done out of the gate. And so it's there's different ways we can save money in the healthcare, right? Than keeping our athletes from getting MRIs on their knees and their shoulders.
It's insane. I'm like, why am I doing PT on something that we don't even know that it's wrong? And then I ended up kind of minorly hurting my LCL too. And then I ended up talking to Dr. Stidham, but even when he went to get the MRI, they approved it on the left knee. But they still they denied it like 3 or 4 times for me to get. Even when I finally got the MRI, Dr. Stidham had to resubmit it and urgent and they kept saying, nope, he doesn't need it. Nope, he doesn't need it. I'm like, are you kidding me? What do you mean I don't need it? And then finally when they approved it, they're like, oh yeah, you have no ACL. I'm like, I could have told you that 2 years ago.
No shit. Right? And that's the problem with medicine these days is they have people working for these insurance companies who know nothing about disease and pathology, and then they get a request from the surgeon, and then they look at a list of things that surgeon has to meet in order to trigger, right, whatever their authorization protocol is in order to get it done. And so luckily, and I think with AI, we're going to get a lot better with it, is that luckily we know what those things are, right? We know what we need, right, to say in that moment. It doesn't say that we're lying. I'd say we're stretching the truth a little bit with regards to like someone hurt a knee is sprained. All right, I'm concerned that they have a meniscus tear because they're feeling some locking and buckling, or you know what I mean, something like, or instability, they're giving out, they're shifting, or anything else like that. And it's such a stupid game that we have to play, and it's so sad that like that's where we want to save money, right? With all the other stuff that's going on in healthcare and the costs, and especially when we start getting into chronic disease and that sort of thing. And where we're saving money is preventing a professional athlete from getting an MRI. Like,
and my insurance is like $800 a month. So it's like, and I have to pay that on time. I don't get to say no. I don't feel like it. I don't approve your bill this month.
I haven't used you so much.
Exactly. I wish.
Exactly. Let me run that through my authorization department. No, it is a real deal, and that's honestly like our biggest battle. And I struggle with it too, because my instinct is to drop all the insurance, but that alienates our patients too, right? Then it's just like, well, like I can't afford, to this and then this and this, and so the way our workaround is just to really be as specific as possible about each end. What does United need? What does Aetna need? What does Cigna need? What does Blue Cross need? Like we are very specific about every single rotator cuff, labrum, meniscus, need, and then boom, let's get it done and send it. And so we have an awesome team that does that. And yeah, you're articulating a very big problem in the healthcare system. I think not just for our athletes, but for everyone. Get the damn information.
Yeah. Right? So, no, I feel really lucky to have both you and Dr. Stidham on my side, because he's amazing too. And you guys both really help me a lot. Yeah.
And I mean, you're kind of building momentum, right? Like you're feeling pretty good, and you've been training a lot. You look good. You're you're getting ready. So he ended up doing
what happened?
So did he end up doing the meniscus too? I can't remember if that was part of it too. I know he redid your ACL. You can see here, obviously,
see the button, or is that the
this is the ACL right here. So PCL along the back right here, and then this is the stump where it kind of comes up, and then unfortunately, he had a mid-substance tear kind of right in the middle of it right there. And then it looked like you had an undersurface of the meniscus as well. Do you recall anything on that? I forgot.
It was both of my meniscus, because I had 2 separate injuries on my knee after that when I was trying to go back to training without the surgery. And so he shaved off part of one of them, and then he did put a couple stitches in the other one.
Gotcha. Yeah. I felt bad because I reviewed this MR, and you were feeling pretty good. You had some swelling, and I think there was something on your horizon that you were training for, if I remember right, and you were trying to make a decision of whether or not to kind of keep going or scale back and reset and get this thing reconstructed.
Well, you mean back before I did
before the surgery? Yeah. I think you were still training and still trying to push to go even in the setting of an unstable knee.
I competed like 4 tournaments on it, kind of halfway, but those are the ones that I didn't compete that well in. And because it was just also, by the time I finally did get the MRI, I'm like, okay, well, I'm training full out and doing CrossFit. I was able to do all that. So I was running, jumping, doing everything, training full out.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that same thing that I felt the first time. I didn't feel that slip. It never did that this time. So it was
that makes sense, because I think it was more of a partial here. Before there were still some fibers that were kind of holding on, so you didn't have that gross pivot instability that you had before.
It was just a harder decision to make. That first time, it was like as soon as it slipped in that match, and it was like right after I heard it, I went in for the surgery. This time I was like, so much time's already passed, and now I'm going to take this step back, and it just stole so much time out of my career. But I was just having that like, do I do it or do I just keep trying to go? And
I always like this. I mean, like to say, but I say when a patient's had a previous ACL, is the best thing about having a re-tear of your ACL after having gone through it is that you know what to expect. And the worst part about having a re-tear is that you know what to expect, right? Because it's a journey for sure. Through. Did you do you did CPI before this, right? You went down to Tijuana and got stem cells and everything. Like, how was that experience? I'm curious. Do you know Danny locally?
Oh yeah.
Danny. Yeah. I had a chance to meet him. Actually, just met his sister too. She is a teacher down at my son's middle school. She's a PE teacher now. She's rad. Yeah, she's awesome. But got a chance to meet Danny just randomly. I think we were at a birthday party on the west side or something like that, and we were just talking. And I think in the periphery, I heard someone talking about stem cells, and I'm such a nerd that I'm like, I'm like, what'd you say? And he was telling someone else about CPI, and I knew about CPI, but I didn't realize he was. I guess he's a recruiter, right?
What's CPI?
Cellular Performance Institute down in Tijuana, and obviously Nate can tell you more about it. But I've had plenty of patients. Obviously, Dorian, kind of went down there, and a lot of local patients now are starting to kind of go down there more. And I think people, even based on your experience and what you showed down there as well. But yeah, how was that experience?
It was good. Yeah. Danny's a character. I've known him for a long time.
A character. He's got a good energy.
So the guys that run CPI,
Scotty, right?
Scotty, he used to run a jiu-jitsu brand called OTM. It was like one of the original like gi brands. They were real big back in the day. They sponsored Rafael Lovato and Marcelo Garcia, and they sponsored me from like purple belt up into my first years of black belt. So I knew them from that. And then he ended up getting into the stem cell thing and opening the clinic and everything. So then I kind of had that connection with them, and I knew Danny through that. And so he actually hit me up when they first started opening and was like, hey, if you have injury or whatever, come down and everything. So so I went down and got it done. And but that was during that span of time where I was trying to see if there's anything else I could do other than getting the surgery, you know? So, and I did it on both of my knees, because I did have a partial LCL tear on my left knee too. And when I got the other knee, my left knee looked at again when I was thinking about doing the surgery on my right knee. Dr. Stidham said there didn't look like there was anything left on the left side. So I don't, but people say the LCL is the one that kind of may heal itself anyway too, and
depending,
stuff. So.
Yeah, depending on where it's torn, right? If it's torn on the upper, we call it the proximal part, then it tends to have a better blood supply than the lower. But you know me, I'm a huge believer in stem cells, whether allogenic, right, at CPI, where they culture and expand the birth product derived ones, or a lot of the ones we're doing here, like kind of locally, which are the autogenic, right, taking your own stem cells from your pelvis and through bone marrow and platelets and that sort of thing. So I am constantly in awe of the power of it. And it's not the panacea. It's not the be all say all. It's not like, we're going to be able to fix femur fractures with it and, full blown ACLs and things like that. But I will tell you, every day I'm impressed with the power of it. And I think that it is something that I think the conversation needs to continue to happen more and more and more. And I like what they're doing on there, honestly. They're ahead. And I think that U.S. is taking notice on that, right? And
hope so, yeah.
I think there's a lot of studies kind of going out. I know the change in, like it or not, but the change in administration is going to be good for a lot of the things that we're utilizing: peptides, stem cells, exosomes, and growth factors. And I think that obviously, if we standardize it and we do it in the right way, and I just don't think we have to wait for the randomized control trials. I think if it's safe, and if we're very professional and upfront and transparent about the goals of it, all right, and what we're trying to do, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to keep doing what we're doing here and be able to provide an experience like you had down at CPI here in the U.S. And that's kind of my next mission here is to make it doable, right? Because it's not nothing, right? It's expensive, and you go down there staying, and they do a good job and they take care of you, but it's but it's comprehensive to getting the MRIs. They have full protocols. I think they have follow-ups and follow-up MRIs. It sounds like they're pretty comprehensive with it.
They did a really good job. And I'm supposed to go down and get another one done now. And I'm hoping it's going to be helpful now that I got the surgery and everything.
For sure. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that you're beating yourself up, you aren't at all, but I tell patients, man, do whatever you can leading up to any sort of procedure to kind of leave nothing else out there, right, on the table. Like from a mental side, go into surgery knowing you tried everything. And sometimes we don't have the luxury to do that. Like professional athletes, it's like you got a small window of therapeutic, management. Like, and sometimes, right before a season, like you don't have another option, or like you have 9 months to recover. And so you don't have the luxury to try exosomes and peptides and stem cells. It's like, okay, like likelihood I'm gonna have to have surgery. I might as well just do it now and get there. And, I don't know that there's a specific season for jiu-jitsu per se, but like, and obviously most sports are year round now anyways. And so we don't necessarily have those therapeutic windows that we, previously, have, but ultimately a lot of the decisions we're making are based on, especially in our high level and our professional athletes, are based on their, what we call therapeutic windows, right? Like where is our opportunity? And if for you had, the patience and you're like, okay, if I have to have surgery, I just want to know nothing else is going to get me there.
Yeah.
And that gives you a lot of peace going into surgery and knowing, okay, this is where I need to be. This is the procedure I needed. Right.
Yeah. But it's hard to, just because like I don't necessarily have a season, but also it's like I have just like the age factor, so
clock's ticking.
I was 32 at 31 was my best year of competition ever, and then I heard it at 32 and now I'm coming back at 35. So I was poised for that 32 to 35 to be like the best stretch of my career. And now I lost that because they wouldn't really let me get the MRI and everything. And so now it's like, it's a hard thing. And then I had, even after I got the MRI, I was like, do I want to do surgery? And I'm doing good. And so I even had it scheduled once and then canceled it and signed up for a tournament instead and was able to do it. So I'm like, okay, like I'm doing good. And so I just beat myself up over the fact that I let an injury take 3 years of my career away, So that's like a hard thing, but I'm also like, I'm 35. There's, plenty of fighters that are 35 to 40 that are still competing at the high level. So I just got to make sure I make the most out of the time that I still got left.
Well, I can't speak to BJJ specifically from an age standpoint, but where I see most of it is up here when you have the gas in the tank, right? And the willingness to commit to the discipline and all the things that you already are doing in the training. I mean, it's like I said, you're building momentum right now. Like what's on the calendar? Like, where are you looking at?
Well, I'm training pretty hard now. I took a little break from PT because I'm sure you remember the last time that I talked to you, I was having a real big trouble with my range of motion.
You were probably maybe 3-4 degrees short of that deep flexion, which is, I know, important in your sport.
So then I was just like not sure what to do. I was almost going back in to get a cleanup surgery and whatever. And then luckily you were actually the one that told me like, hey, maybe you're like pulling on it too much. And I was going into physical therapy and they were like really yanking and pressing on it. And then you're like, maybe just do less of that. And then I actually went out to Turkey to get a hair transplant. And because of that, I had to take some time all the way off. And I just didn't do anything. And I took a little break from PT and I just laid off it and I got 100% of it back. Now I can sit all the way back down on my heels and I just needed to take a little time off,
Good. And that's what we typically see too. And that's, I was pretty confident that what you see, because a lot of times when you're, especially in the window at which you were doing it, is that your body's still in this regenerative phase. And so scar tissue is still forming, the graft is still incorporating, meaning it's turning into yours, the meniscus is still healing. And so when you're pushing up against the cartilage and you're kind of grinding, your knee is recognizing that as healing that still needs to happen and inflammation that needs to kind of come in there. So the knee probably was swelling, the fat pad in the front was getting a little full, tightness in the back. And so there's this process by which when things heal, is they heal very disorganized at first. Think about like a rat's nest of healing. And our connective tissue, whether it be ACL, meniscus, ligaments, it likes linear. It likes to be nice and linear. And so when it heals as a rat nest, the remodeling phase is where that rat's nest kind of realigns itself to these linear fibers in the knee. And that's more physiologic. I mean, that's normal. That's a soft meniscus that's elastic and stretches, and same thing with the ACL. And when you're pushing through it, you're almost like starting over that healing process, right? And creating that rat's nest where it's trying to remodel. And so that's why I was like, just don't just skate back just a little bit, right? Like let it kind of come, let that remodeling phase come, and then get the swelling that comes down and that acute inflammation or that chronic inflammation, it'll go away, and then you'll realize it'll release for you.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of time, but just kind of taking off the gas pedal a little bit on it.
Totally.
So,
yeah. So now that I got that was the big roadblock for me, and I was thinking about doing the cleanup surgery and all. And it was just like, it was
I'm
so
so happy you didn't have to do that, dude.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, no, not another one, because you had made so much progress. Then you had that little setback, and then and so I'm stoked. And you're moving around. Shoot, when I saw you, you were like, I mean, you had to go back on a crutch or something like that, right?
I did. After the first time I tried to train and lift all in the same week, I had just like this weird thing where I was getting these spasms. Like I would step it and I would get like this shock through my knee. I was like, ugh. Yeah. And I had like one day where I had to have my crutches back out because I just couldn't even put weight on it again. But now I've been back to training. Like I trained Monday, Tuesday, trained today, trained fairly hard. And when I do jiu-jitsu, I don't really feel it, but I can't do anything with like impact on it still. So I can't do like a 1-footed jump or like running really. Like I tried running on the mat a little bit today, and I was actually able to do better than I had before, but now I'm going back into PT so that they can help me take that last little ramp up.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Well, you're moving. I mean, I'm always just, it's the doctor and the nerd in me, but I'm always looking at Gate and like watching him, like, okay, he's moving pretty good. He's flexing, he's mobile. When we're training, I'm like, okay, we're seeing progress with it. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, you're looking good. I can't skip past the hair transplant. Don't tell me, like, so I've heard, you see it online, you see it on TikTok, you see it, it's everywhere. Like this place is kind of, this place is what I want to recreate for my clinic and my office. Like with the patients that are, I'm grateful that they're flying in from out of town, from South Pacific, Australia, like Hawaii, like US, is like, I want to create an experience that you had out there, right? So,
it was awesome.
Yeah. They took care of everything.
Red carpet.
Red carpet.
Pretty much. Yeah.
What's it in a limo?
Yeah. No, it's pretty much. Yeah. What's it called?
Yeah. It's called Now Hair Time.
Yeah. Killer.
Yeah. So they, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not supposed to talk about what my deal with them exactly was and everything, but once I was there, they picked me up from the airport, stayed with me the whole time. But we stayed in a 4 or 5 star hotel. Me and my mom, she actually came with me too. Nice. And they pick you up in the van and they take you to do some blood tests as soon as you get there, and then they're with you the whole time. So they take you to the clinic and back. And the clinic is just super nice, and they're like super responsive too, but leading up to it, and then even afterward, I was impressed with how they kept following up with me afterwards too. Like they're like, okay, you're at like a month after, send us in pictures. Okay, you're at a 2 months after, send us in pictures. And they're just, it was a super cool setup, and there was a bunch of other fighters and stuff there too, and it's just really awesome. Beautiful office, and like all the staff was super nice, and it was a super cool experience.
I love that. I think we need more of that, honestly. Like I feel like medicine has gone so the opposite direction with all that. It's sterile. Yeah, well, that, and it's a volume-based game now, right? With reimbursements dropping for professional fees and facility fees and everything else like that, the way that offices and clinics are making up for that is seeing 2 or 3 times as many people in a shorter period of time. Yeah. And so you lose the number one most important thing in medicine, which is, in my opinion, is the human connection portion of it, and treating people like they deserve to be treated. Like, and to me, it's like, especially in my world, right? Like we're dealing with injury and recovery and all that stuff. And when people come in, I teach and train my staff, and it's always an evolving process. It's like, no one comes in on their best day. No one is here on their best day. Like if anything, it probably is their worst day, right? Like, and so are we just going to like shuttle them around like sheep, and you know what I mean? And we're insensitive and short with them, and like we're dicks and that sort of thing. Like, no, like let's treat them like they deserve to be treated. Like this is a human thing, right? It's a human experience, and it seems like such a simple thing, but it's completely lost in the medical field. And to me, it's disgusting. And so that's what I want. I want the red carpet for everyone that walks into my office. Absolutely. And that's, that's on me to build that. And
no, that's awesome. You did a really good job. I was glad to have you, and Dr. Stidham's really good too, but I had your guys' cell phone and everything. So like when I have questions, you guys are answering me and everything. And I'm like, wow, it's awesome, because like my mom went to do a colonoscopy a little while ago, and she came home I took her up to, it was because of her insurance, it had to be all the way up in like Redwood City. Yeah. So I drove her up there and then drove her back. And then the first time she tried to eat something, she's like, oh, that hurt super bad. And I'm like, maybe that's normal.
Yeah,
colonoscopy.
right. Yeah,
I don't know.
right,
Like, and,
right.
and then she's
and then
like,
you're getting online and looking things up.
yeah.
And
And
yeah.
then she's like, oh, it really hurts. It really hurts. And so like they gave us a packet. So there's like a number on the front of the packet. And I call it and I'm like, hey, my mom's like I just came back from your surgery center, you know, but I don't know if it's who you're talking. I guess the surgery center maybe wasn't the place to call, but it was like, that was the number that was on the top of the packet. So I don't know who anybody else to call, you know? And I'm like, she's having like stomach pain. And they're like, okay. And like transfer me to somebody else. I'm like, hey, my mom just came back from there. She's just having real bad stomach pain. Is this normal? They're like, I mean, here, talk to this person. And they just like kept carting me around. And this lady's like, she's like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like we did our part, like basically. And then she's like, oh, you can bring her back in. And I'm like, I live in Santa Cruz. Like I'll drive her up there, but is this normal? Or is it? And they're like, we can't give you any, you know, any type of advice over the phone. And then they're like, well, you know, we do pump the colon with gas. And so maybe it's kind of normal. So I'm like, well, do I take her into ER or not or whatever? And I'm like, Mom, just let me take you to the hospital. And she's like, she did the same thing. She broke her femur. She fell down and broke her femur like a couple of years ago. And she wouldn't let me take her to the hospital because she had to work. So she worked all day, went to sleep.
With a broken femur.
Yeah. And then she woke up in the middle of the night and she's like, I'll let you take me to the hospital in the morning. Get to the hospital. She's got a broken femur. And so I'm like, I'm just seeing the same thing happen again. And then she's like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm like, Mom, let's go to the hospital. And then she's like, again, like in the middle of the night, she's like, you can take me in the morning. We get there. She had a perforated colon, ended up having to be like 3-4 days in the hospital and get another operation and all this stuff. And I was just like,
messed up.
Geez, dude, like, you know, like it just feels like there's not really any way to know, like, you know, it's like, you know, go to the ER and sit in line or, you know, so I was just thinking that like when I had a bunch of questions for you guys, I felt bad afterwards. I'm like, is this normal? So no, my pain is,
it's, you know, and the reason we are, you know, whether it's, you know, me or my director of operations, Becca, or Brendan, my athletic trainer, or JD, my PA, it's like always on call for these types of things. Cause, I guess more of the things that we can't necessarily measure in the spiritual side of things is that if you're lost in your head about whatever's going on, whatever symptoms you're feeling, and there's concern and there's anxiety and there's stress, you're not fucking healing, right? Totally. Like that inflammation, there's a direct correlation and I see it like all the time. And so if we can at least provide peace of mind, then your outcome's going to be better.
Totally.
And so it's not about me not wanting to pick the phone, it's about us making sure that you have complete trust in it. And if there's anything that kind of happens along the way, we can quickly answer and put your mind at ease when it comes to anything or deal with it right away. Right.
For sure. So, no, I really appreciate that. You guys helped me get through that. I felt a lot more pain this time than I did the first time. It was like the first time I remember being like all high on the drugs when I came out of the hospital, and I was like texting people all like almost like I was drunk, and like, and this time it was like I woke up like in pain, like right off the bat, and it was just like, this was just a harder one in general. Is the second one.
Revisions are no joke, man. I mean, you just saw one yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Dylan hangs out with us in the OR, which we're grateful for. But revisions are as surgeons, it's our art, right? Like meaning, obviously, there's a lot of science that goes into it, but a lot of times when we're revising ACLs, you have to turn into MacGyver. Like you have to really figure out how to make things work because the tunnels are already drilled from the previous ACL. It's torn. You got to take out the old ACL and the tunnels are there. And so you have to build the graft around those tunnels. And hopefully, like yours were, the tunnels are in the right spot. But if they're not, you're having to either fill and bone graft and then redirect the tunnel and do these other things that are just not, it's not just like, it's not science, it's art, right? You really have to know anatomically where things go, but you also have to be creative with how you actually make that happen. And sometimes, unfortunately, there's more pain with that, right? Because you're ended up, you're taking out more bone, you're packing things, you're doing things different than, and that's why I think you probably felt the difference between the first. And not all patients, have that experience, but it is more common when you're going back in there and creating trauma again, right? To have more pain after that second surgery,
and having the meniscus involved in that too.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing. Exactly. Yeah. How were the trenches though? How'd you do? Like I'm always curious, I always tell patients and that's why I kind of want to be there as a lifeline for them. And something that because I've never had an ACL reconstruction or revision ACL, meniscus and everything else like that, but I see it hundreds and hundreds of, times a year. But what are the trenches like, and a lot of doubt, right? I'm guessing. And especially and this, I should kind of preface it, but I'm talking high level athlete, a professional athlete who uses your body in the capacity that you do in order to provide a living kind of for yourself, in addition to the coaching, the stuff that you do, to completely have that identity stripped from you, and for you to look down and not be able to even move your leg afterwards. And and having gone through it before, I'm sure helped, but like those are some dark days or
it was hard. I mean, I'm like just locked into my nerd side and just play a lot of video games and chill out and everything. But
so you can let go, you can separate a little bit.
I can, but it was like I said, the first time I was all high on the drugs and was just like kind of enjoying it. But this time, I didn't sleep for like 2 days. Because I was just like in like a lot of pain. And then afterward,
spinning.
And afterward, it was weird because the swelling wasn't going down. So I was like swelled out and just like, and it was like a long time. For like 2 months, the swelling didn't go down. And the PT didn't know what was up, and Dr. Stidham didn't know what was up, and we knew something wasn't right, but we weren't sure what it was. And then like a boil popped up on my knee.
That's right, the screw. Your body was rejecting the screw, right? Is that what happened?
Screw, and that was really weird because I'm all like, what the hell is that thing? And then it became like this big pimple, and then I like took a picture of it and showed it to Dr. Stidham, and he's like, come in right now. And he was like in between surgeries, and he just like hopped out and like he lanced it open right there on the spot, and the screw popped out of it. And then
your body was rejecting it.
I heard it go ding 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 ding, as it came out. And then after that, the swelling started going down, and then everything was kind of more smooth sailing. So it's like the last time I did it, I was back to training at 6 months. Post-op, I was starting to train again. 8 months post-op, I was like training hard. 10 months post-op, I did my first tournament because I had heard it a week before Worlds 2018. I was back. I did one tournament before Worlds 2019 and competed Worlds 2019. So I did the whole thing within that calendar year. I was already back competing by the time the next Worlds came around. And this time it's like, it's going to be a year at the beginning of March. So, and I'm still not like fully back yet, but
you're seeing the light though.
But it's just, older, second one, meniscus, and the screw coming out. Like, Dr. Stidham's like, your recovery started when that screw came out. I'm like, okay, so if you were to step us back 2 months, then I would be like the same as having been 10 months last time. I'm not too far off from where I was. And so I'm just like, I'm okay with it, but
there's kind of an understanding in those of us who take care of high level athletes. And it's sometimes, a lot of times, I should say, most times, it takes longer the higher level athlete you are, right? Because you're at the very tip of the spear, right? And I think where you are functionally now, I think a lot of people I could be, you know what I mean? Like I could do what I'm doing, right? At the level where you are. And so having patience, right, for that, and knowing like exactly what you said, is, I think there is an age component. You're doing all the right stuff, right? Like training and jiu-jitsu, especially if you go down and do stem cells and all that stuff, the peptides, et cetera, that's all going to help you kind of just get over that hump a little bit. But we definitely see that hockey stick kind of go up in that like 9, 10, 11, 12, months for sure, even in the revision setting. So I agree, probably weren't seeing much in the way of progression before that screw came out. And once that kind of came out, the inflammatory process shut off, and then you started healing and incorporating and so that makes sense.
Totally. Well, that was a hard thing for me even doing it, is because I'm like, like Dr. Stidham's like, if you weren't an athlete, I wouldn't even be thinking of even doing the surgery, because I could surf, train, do CrossFit, run a mile in like 6 minutes, like all the jump, burpees, train hard twice a day, do everything. Why do a surgery, But then it was like, when I would try to go to a tournament and then get back to training, there goes one meniscus, and then I go and there goes the other meniscus, and then it's like,
and when you can't trust your body at the level that you're at, like you want to be able to be clear-minded, and you don't need to be, you don't want to have any of that running in the background.
Right.
And we say that like with all of our athletes, and you think about a surfer who's paddling into Jaws or something like that, right? And he's like, I wonder if my knee's going to support me on this drop. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need that, right? At all. And so I agree with not that there was any doubt, but I just, we want to try to avoid procedures, and we're really good at it if we can, but ultimately, especially with what you're doing, the ACL is just, it's just one of those ones that you just got to get it taken care
Well,
of.
and then when I was in that time where I couldn't get the range back, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Before I did the surgery, I was sitting back just fine, you know? And then I'm like, what? And then Dr. Sim's like, well, we can open it up and do this cleanup, but there's no guarantee that's going to help. And I'm just like, what if I don't get it back? And then it was just like, that was a little scary part. But now I'm like, okay, I'm good now.
And it'll be part of your story. Right, like it'll be part of your story, and it'll be part of the way that, because you're inspiring so many people, like the stuff that you're putting out there. Like I told you on the mat the other day, so sick. It's you got a chance to see about it too.
Well, your page is pretty funny. Sorry, funny because I was thinking of a specific video.
Which
the purple belt?
What's up with purple belt? That was so.
Do we have?
He wants context on that.
Because it was. We'll put it up on the.
Well, no jokes aside, you're a musician too. Dude, you're a legend.
Multifaceted.
I know. But no, seriously. Like I think it's gonna be part of your story and your journey. I know you're kind of out of the gauntlet when it comes to it, but it definitely is a real thing for our high level athletes to have to go through something like that. And I'd like to say, and the hope is that anyone that goes through that journey of recovery, whether it be an ACL or something like that, is that they come out a better version of themselves, right? Having to have done that, right? Similar to what you were saying about losing, failing forward and that sort of thing, right? Earlier on, it's just like, I never wished upon anyone, but for the most part, if patients aren't better at the end of the journey, then one, I didn't do my job, and two, they missed the point.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm trying to find the silver lining of it, because I'm like, maybe if I would have gone through that time, maybe I'd be burnt out right now. And maybe maybe I would have had those 3 years, but then maybe I would have hurt myself now and then been out 3 years now. And then it would have been like 35 to 38. And then I'd be like, now it's just not really realistic. Whereas now coming back at 35, maybe I'll go until 42 and maybe I'll end up having more time in jiu-jitsu. In that time has like all of a sudden changed like a lot. Where now it's like, they're going to do a reality show for jiu-jitsu on the UFC is doing a reality show. And it's just like, it's right at the beginning of like really blowing up. So maybe I'll get more of that time, and maybe I got to kind of change what my goals are compared to what it used to be and stuff. But maybe it was, meant to be that way. So I get a better chance of taking advantage of these next few years too.
For sure. And we all want to see you back out there. We want to see you compete. You've done a good job with this. And I told you that the other day. Like, I'm not just saying that, like the editing and just the shorts that you have here kind of with training are really, I don't see anyone else doing this in the way that you're doing it.
Thank you.
And I think the purple belt definitely is, I'm sure you got a lot of attention with that one for sure. What's the story behind that though?
So
I understand the story based on the lyrics in it, right? And this is so good.
Right.
I'm a purple belt. Don't fuck with me, you might hurt yourself.
This is good.
I'm a purple belt. Don't fuck with me, you might hurt yourself.
Did you make this beat?
I didn't make the beat. No, I got the beat off YouTube.
I'm a purple.
This is the ladder.
Stroll up in the class with my eyes.
Anyone watching hasn't seen this, go to Nate's Nathan Mendelsohn BJJ. Go to his Instagram and watch it. But I can only assume there is something underlying that in the community of
totally. I mean, there's like I've been writing rhymes since I was like real young, and I would put stuff out, and
it's
then eventually,
good.
Oh, thanks. Eventually I was like, maybe I'll do some stuff about jiu-jitsu, and then I would do some, and then like they would people would like them, and then I'm like, what if I start doing ones that are like really like try to be kind of funny or talk
personality.
There's a lot of jokes in the jiu-jitsu community about different stuff, like the blue belt disappears. Blue belt's the belt that people like. There's all these like memes about tying a blue belt on someone and then they disappear. Because it's like so many people fall off at blue belt, and then like the purple belt is like shows up late. You think you know everything.
They're the shit.
You know enough to think you know more than your master.
Teenagers.
Exactly. So I was just speaking to all that stuff, and just even more
so good
nowadays when you start to go, like we were talking about before, taking the respect and the hierarchy out of it. It's like, you know, the purple belt will be like, I even saw a video with Gordon, you know who Gordon Ryan is?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the guy that trains with Gordon saying, yeah, you know, Gordon was telling me one time that the higher the belt, the more that they suck.
Yeah.
You know, and like if you go into a gym and you see a guy with the red and black belt, which is higher than black belt, but you have to be like 60 to get that belt.
Yeah.
You just know that the guy sucks at jiu-jitsu. And I'm just like, because you're a purple belt that's 25 and maybe you can tap the 60-year-old guy and maybe he doesn't know the new like fancy move that you know, now the guy sucks. And it's like, you wouldn't even know jiu-jitsu if he hadn't come from Rio, you know, 30 years ago and taught it to the guy that taught it to the guy that taught it to you. So that's why the lineage and all that and the respect and the hierarchy, it's like, even if I can beat my master in a roll, he's still always my master, you know? And if he comes to tell me something like, hey, Claudio showed me stuff to this day, you know, like he'll be like, hey, you know, move your hand more here, do that. I'm like, I could tap you if I wanted to, you know, I'm not going to listen to you now, you know, but that's what starts to happen when you start to lose all the traditions and the respect.
Is that loyalty lost in the sport? Like, or cause you seem kind of a little bit of it. I mean, I haven't talked a whole lot, so I don't know for sure, but it seems like you are an aberrancy in that, right? Like, doesn't seem like as many people have that same level of loyalty that you do to your master and to, you know, your lineage, if you will. So,
yeah, it's definitely kind of the type of thing where you're saying of people are seeing themselves as a brand and themselves as a, so it's more of, and when there's money involved, it's kind of more of like do what's best for you, go, you know, so it definitely does, you start to lose that, like that loyalty aspect and stuff. And it, I mean, it just becomes hard to build anything at a certain point. But you see like the biggest teams, like Alliance has split into like 5 other teams and now those, but nothing ever really grows if you kind of don't have the loyalty to stick together. But at the same time with Claudio, I think one of our strengths is that we have him kind of above everyone else, because I've seen other gyms, like even people in Brazil and stuff, where they have like kind of like 5 heads that are all equal. They tend to split off into 3 different entities at some point because you don't have that one like direction, you know? So I think that's why, you know, hierarchies work well in almost anything, you know? And so I think that's an important thing.
You spoke on money a little bit. Like, what is that? What does that look like for someone kind of coming up? And is that something that obviously professionals are talking about, or is it more so pure about just winning competitions and somehow building their own brand, whether it be kind of online and partnering with brands and things like that? Is that like what does that route look like?
That's changing a lot. I mean, in back in the day, you know, I was just thinking about this the other day, because I've got some kind of exciting things in the works that'll hopefully start making things be cool for me here in the future and everything. And like just talking to like Travis, I'm like, dude, you're coming up in the age where like there's actual jiu-jitsu athletes that don't even have to teach, like it, because you know, back in the day it was like there was never any money in the competition itself, but compared to like, you know, a wrestler might have a hard time like monetizing his name after he's done competing, because there's not really wrestling schools, or even like MMA, like those MMA fighters, they got to make that money while they're competing, because there's not a huge market for training MMA people, you know, but jiu-jitsu, you could go anywhere in the world and open a jiu-jitsu school. And, and so it would come from grow your name big enough. Then you could open a school, you could travel around and do seminars, you could have sponsors, and then eventually open 1 school, 2 schools, maybe have an association. And that's kind of how you make the money, you know? And that's still kind of the path that I'm looking towards. But nowadays it's like, I talk to like Travis, I'm like, dude, you're coming up in the time where like you can actually make money competing. Like CJI paid $1 million, you know, like, and that was obviously
nuts.
Not going to be all the time like that, but it was a big step in the right direction. And it's like, you know,
you're for that, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Is that just going to grow the sport?
Well, I just feel like, I mean, is it pushing guys because there aren't a whole lot of opportunities like that, like CGI? Is it pushing guys towards MMA where they see potentially a little bit more opportunity to monetize what they're doing, or is that not part of the discussion at all?
No, I mean, that was the old thing, was like guys would come up through jiu-jitsu, and then they'd, you know, once they kind of accomplish everything they wanted within the sport of jiu-jitsu, then they would make the transition to MMA, and then they could maybe make more money in MMA. But now it's kind of almost the opposite, because now you can make money at jiu-jitsu.
You don't need to.
And not get hit in the head. So some of the guys are like, I'm not going to transition, you know, but at the same time, you got guys like Cade Ruotolo, who's, you know, it's like there was a weird little space there where it was like jiu-jitsu guys really dominated MMA in the very beginning. And then they started making more rules and rounds and time limits, and all those things actually make it a lot harder for a jiu-jitsu athlete to be successful in MMA because
they're climbing the ladder.
Right. Climbing the ladder, and then the round ends, and they let the guy stand back up again, you know, or like, and the gloves make it a lot harder to like sink a choke. The Mata Leão, the rear naked is still the most common submission in MMA. And I've trained quite a bit in MMA. I never fought in MMA, but just having those gloves on, it makes it so much harder, you know, and
it separates you a little bit.
And then you got the cage, and guys get so good at defending against the cage. So it really does favor kind of like the wrestlers and the strikers and stuff, and the scoring, like, you know, a takedown counts for a lot. Getting a good position kind of counts, but it's like you could get a guy down and take his back. And then if he gets 2 takedowns on you in the next round, then that like counts more than the fact that you had his back, you know? And like, so it was real hard it's been kind of hard. And that model of like, do all your stuff in jiu-jitsu and then transition in MMA at 30 is kind of tough, you know? Cause you know, now you're trying to like get your feet wet in MMA, and by the time you're starting to feel good, now you're 35 and you got this like short little window like Damien Maia or Jacare or some of these guys that you saw.
Yuri, right? Yuri Samoas. I don't know if you know. Like
no, Yuri's my good friend.
Okay. I remember him before his days. I saw him for his same thing, knee issues. You know, back in the day. He's obviously fought in a lot of injury. I think his shoulder as well, but he definitely is. I would assume in that same camp, right? Like kind of at the end of his BJJ career and kind of making that transition. I don't know. It seemed like he was doing okay, but definitely been a little bit rockier than he probably wanted to be. Right?
Another friend of mine, Rodolfo Vieira, he's in the UFC and stuff now. And but now and also like when I was coming up, the idea, like I said, was like, jiu-jitsu is all you need. You don't really need anything outside of jiu-jitsu. So like they used to call my name like on the loudspeaker in middle school, like report to the wrestling practice, because they knew that I did jiu-jitsu, you know, but Claudio was like, don't do wrestling because it's going to make your jiu-jitsu worse. You're going to start turning your back or whatever. And so that mentality has changed a lot over time. It used to be only do jiu-jitsu. Now kids like you see them like Cade, and there's this kid Cody Steele that just got into the UFC, and there's quite a few guys coming up. Mika Galvão wants to start doing MMA, and those kids are coming up from being a kid training jiu-jitsu and wrestling and realizing that they need to have some striking. So instead of being like 30 and only having done jiu-jitsu your whole life, and I'll be like, okay, now let me start doing some wrestling and some striking. And you got 2 years of it, and now you're 32. It's like these kids are like, they're like barely 20, and they've got like 15 years of wrestling, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu. And like, so I think we're going to start seeing the guys, like Cade's like, he's getting his MMA start at like 20, you know?
He looks good too, right? And you like him in one championship, versus the UFC.
I like that he's starting there, because that's a problem that the guys would get too, is like, they'd be like 30, and like, it's hard for them to find mad fights at other promotions, because people don't want to fight the 10-time BJJ world champion, you know? So they'd have like a couple matches, and like, you see, like, that's where people are like, oh, you know, jiu-jitsu doesn't work that well in MMA or whatever. And like, they make that think like, cause you had some high school wrestling, you're going to beat the jiu-jitsu world champion guys. Like when you see those guys in like their first like 5 fights at smaller things, they just walk through everybody. But then now they're in the UFC, and now they're going against other guys that are like super, super high level, top elite athletes. And then sometimes the guys like struggle a little bit, you know, but it's like, but not you that just did wrestling for a couple of years. Like that's like a little, it's a little, they're different thing, you know, but I like that he's like getting to kind of test the waters in one that's maybe not, I'm sure those guys are amazing too. I'm sure they're really good, but you know, if he could get 10 fights before he makes a transition to the UFC, I think that would be good for him. You know?
No, I'm excited where he goes. And I think Ty's not too far behind. I think he wants to get his feet wet a little bit more too, right? So,
I hope his knee's feeling better. I haven't seen him much since.
We're gonna have a conversation on Friday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've talked with him through his, his agent, and things are progressing. I think he's rounding third for sure on it.
Oh, good.
He's getting really, really close. So hopefully I'd like to see him back too as well. So I think they're good. I mean, they're incredible for the sport too.
Oh, totally.
Right? Like it just, the athleticism that you're seeing. We talked about at the very beginning, like a lot of the best athletes aren't getting into these types of sports. And you look at guys like that and you're like, dude, those kids play any sport, right? And they're so athletic, and I call them kids, right? But they chose, BJJ, and obviously it's just so inspiring for a lot. I know River definitely looks up to them and watches them. And I think that there's like, it's a good, in surfing, they say speed, power, and flow, right? Like those are things that you kind of get judged on. And I think there's a correlation with that in jiu-jitsu, speed, power, and flow. And it looks like when someone is really good at it, and we've went back and watched a lot of your YouTube stuff as well, and watching the Rotolo brothers as well, it's like speed, power, flow. Like just and you see how quick and dance, and they do some things that are obviously entertaining, like the backflips and things like that. But like they're just, everything's so smooth, right, with it as well. And I think that that's such a cool thing for young kids to kind of see. And I've seen you comment on things as well, and it seems like you're in agreement with them and how they approach the sport, right? And are quote unquote doing it the right way, right? And progressing the right way and talking about it the right way, and respecting it for what it is. And so I'm stoked to see where they go. I think they're so good for the sport.
Yeah, they're good surfers too.
Well, they spent a lot of time in Costa Rica, right? Down there as well, and obviously down in Huntington. But I think they got their start on Hawaii. I think their parents lived on Oahu for a little bit. I can't remember, but they were in Hawaii for a little bit as well.
But I've been seeing them since they were like River's age. Like I've been seeing them coming up. We always knew that they were going to be really good. But they represent. It's just along the same thing with the taking the gi off. All this weird stuff starts coming up through it. Where like now there's a thing where jiu-jitsu doesn't work. And then you see these like guys that are jiu-jitsu black belts, and when someone says like, "Oh, would you use your jiu-jitsu for self-defense?" "Oh no, what would I do? Pull guard?" It's like, you're a jiu-jitsu black belt. You're supposed, that's what someone that doesn't train would think, because they see people pull guard in a competition. You're supposed to say, no, a guy that knows jiu-jitsu would do a takedown in a street fight. He wouldn't pull guard, and like, and you just see, it's like, it's this weird like reaction to how jiu-jitsu came up so strong as like, we're the best. If you don't like it, where do you want to fight and at what time? And like guys would fight. That's that's what it is. If you don't believe in it, then we're going to fight. Which wasn't necessarily a good thing either, because like, to take it back to the judo thing in Brazil, parents would not put their kids in jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu was a street fight martial art. If you put them in jiu-jitsu, they were going to be at the bar calling everybody out, getting in brawls and whatever. And so they put their kids into judo because judo was the respect and the discipline and everything. And so then here we've been able to kind of change that mentality. So now here in the States, parents see it as a good thing to put their kids into. So we don't want to go back to like but these guys are doing this opposite thing where it's like, they don't want to have to be forced into that box of being like, oh, you're jiu-jitsu black belt, so you think you can kick my ass? Oh, no. Jiu-jitsu doesn't actually work. It's just like rock climbing or whatever. And I don't like that either, because now you're like selling the soul of the art just because you don't want to defend it, And so I like that the Ruotolos are like, they represent well for it. They go out there and they show that it works, and also that they're not just like, they're exciting. People want to see them fight, but they don't have to be like doing the trash talk thing all the time, which is also
good kids. No, I love that you're a soldier for the culture. Just the stuff that you're saying, it is fun to follow, and to have you kind of not only coaching me but River, and be able to, and all the other kids locally, right? Like, and having it at the tournament, like it's pretty special. And I don't know what's next for you, right? With regards to, I think you got a lot left in your tank, right, with regard to gas, but like you definitely have a gift when it comes to translating the amount of knowledge that right, and that you've accumulated over years in such a simple way for like the whitest of whitest belts to kind of understand. And I'm not just saying, like, it's pretty impressive. I watch the practices. I watch you out there with them all the time, and you have such you have such a gift for it. And
thank you.
And so I think that has to be a big part of what, I don't know what's in the works for you. I know there's probably some stuff on the horizon. But it definitely has to be instructing and coaching and that sort of thing as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so, no, definitely. The kids team is a big focus of mine. That's the key to the future of the team is the kids, for sure, because the next kid that's going to be like me or Travis or whatever is going to be one of the kids. The majority of them are probably not going to stick through it till when they're adults, but they're going to take what they learn for the rest of their life. And then hopefully we'll start getting a trickle of a couple of them that make it through that teenage thing and then make it into adulthood. And then now they're the next guys and stuff. So and we're got some exciting stuff happening from the team. We're going to start organizing more and making it more structured. and then also the YouTube, and I want to start working, or I am starting to structure like an online training thing so that I can start teaching people from around the world on the online style too. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Where can people find that?
Yeah.
My YouTube's just Nathan Mendelsohn BJJ. I've been posting all my shorts on there.
But you have longer content on YouTube.
I'm backing up my first 5 videos for the relaunch, and I've got a student of mine. He's actually an NLP guru, and he used to be like an insurance salesman and everything, and now he quit his other job and he works just on YouTube, and he's helping me to structure it and teaching me how to use it and monetize it and everything. So once I kick it off, it's going to be at least one long form video per week on YouTube's too. So it's gonna be exciting.
I say partner up with those brains, man. Like our story will come out eventually and how we met, but like he's the reason we're able to do all of this right now. He's put it together in a really cool way and making it like sick setup, make it comfortable, like so I'd say I get to know NLP and work with that, and anything else that we want to cover and talk?
I guess the last thing, last thought I had was, I mean, you're one of the first of the line of your senseis to have the opportunity to put things out on YouTube and educate people. Same thing with being a physician. It's this new wave. It's this new generation where I think you have the ability and the potential to impact a lot of lives. And thank you for being part of this community.
Yeah, you're a legend, man.
I appreciate it. You guys are. Thank you, man. I was honored to be asked to come on. This is awesome.
No, I'm stoked, and just if anything, be able to connect. I know all of our interactions are pretty short, so it's awesome just to be able to chat and kind of pick your brain a little bit and get a little bit of your background. I know a lot of it's online, but to be able to hear it from you, and stoked with you sharing that with us. So thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll kick it more too, and we'll go out to the lane if you
promise
me the guys aren't going to kick me out.
The only reason I ever get waves out there is because I feel like I've taken care of half the guys out there. So instead of like, Moss, you can have a wave out there. So I get the C- waves or whatever. So
that's good for me. I'll take C-.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, killer. Well, look forward to it. Maybe we'll have you back once you start competing again, and love to kind of hear how that transition goes, and like you're inspiring, through injury and recovery and sharing your story. Like that's my mission as an orthopod who has been connected with the most amazing humans in the world. And that's kind of the genesis of our discussion. It's like, I meet so many rad, epic people who have killer stories. Let's create a platform to be able to share, as vulnerable as we need to be, like all of it, right? And with no kind of agenda other than just like, how'd you get here,
Yeah, I love it.
Killer. Right on.
Right on, guys.
Let's end it there.
All right, well, appreciate it.
Right on.